Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are just waiting for people to enter the webinar. So give us a few more minutes to let everybody inside. So I see that people are slowly coming in from the waiting room. And I think we'll just wait a couple more minutes to make sure no one is missing any part of this very interesting session today. Great, so good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's information session, where we will be zooming in on the European Research Council, Europe's premier funding organization for excellent frontier research. Very specifically today, we will introduce you to the different types of ERC grants that are open to researchers from anywhere in the world to carry out their high risk, high impact research projects in Europe. Today's event is part of a global event series. It's a collaboration between the European Research Council and the EURAXESS Worldwide Network. My name is Susanne Renzo-Vaso. I am Regional Coordinator of EURAXESS Worldwide in ASEAN. I'm based in Singapore and I'm joined today by three of my colleagues. And of course, I want to introduce you to them just briefly. First of all, the second half of the EURAXESS ASEAN team, my colleague, Dr. Jenny Lind El Mako. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm joining you from Manila. So just to flag that we also have a Q&A on the 5th of October. So if you have some questions, even after this webinar, please join us for that. We have evaluators joining us then. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Then we have with us the country coordinator for EURAXESS Korea, Dr. Tomasz Wierzbowski. Hi, Tomasz.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tomasz. I represent EURAXESS and I am based in Seoul, Korea.
And we have with us the country coordinator for Japan, our colleague, Dr. Judith Eriga Magir. Hi, Judith.
Hello, thank you for the introduction and a very warm welcome to all of you, especially those of you who are joining us from Japan. I'm coordinating EURAXESS Japan webinars and events in Japan, and I hope that this webinar will be super useful for all of you and we will have more Japanese candidates applying for ERC grants. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Judith. Now, in the webinar today, we will be hearing from a scientific officer, Dr. Oswalt. He will talk to us about the different grants that are available and how you can apply for them. And we've also invited an ERC grantee from ASEAN. It's Dr. Novi Quadranti. And he will talk to us a little bit about the research that he is doing with the support of the ERC. So it will give you a good idea about the type of project that the ERC is funding. And Novi, of course, will also share a little bit of insight and advice on how you should go about maybe preparing your own application for this extremely prestigious grant opportunity. Now, before we start with this session, usually we have these webinars and we can see you, we can engage with you virtually. It's all very different. We'd like to get to know you just a little bit better. So we've prepared a very, very short poll. And my colleague Jenny is just sharing a website now. If you just could briefly, very quickly type in here www.menti.com and you use that particular code that you see here on the top. It's 78867463. Just very briefly to give us an understanding who our audience is today. We've just prepared 4 questions. So if you could just quickly go onto this website, menti.com, and use the code here, 78867463, and then we can get a little bit of an understanding of who it is we're talking to today. So Jenny, what do you think? Shall we start with the very quick poll. First of all, where are you currently based? So we see lots of people in Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, of course, Hong Kong, Tokyo Institute of Technology, Vietnam, Kuching in Malaysia. We have someone joining us from Greece. So it's a very international mixture. So fabulous. That gives us a good idea where you are based. And as we've said already, those grants are open to researchers from anywhere in the world. So very welcome to all of you in your part of the world. Next question. How would you describe yourself? So are you a scientist? Or are you a researcher? Are you probably a policy officer? Would you say you are a student? Or are you just someone who's interested in science? So lots of people that are scientists and researchers, that is fabulous, because this is exactly the type of people we like to speak to today. So lots of you are identifying as researchers or scientists. Fabulous. Great. So let's look at the third question. We're almost done. How familiar are you already with the ERC grant? So you say you don't really know that much, or you know a little bit. So lots of you just know a little bit. Then that, of course, today is an excellent opportunity for you to find out what this is all about and what opportunities it offers for your research career progression. Wonderful. So maybe if we just ask the final question, and that is, what are you hoping to find out? So this is, of course, of interest to our panelists today. Do you want to know about the types of grants that are available? You're more interested in the application process. You're particularly interested to hear about Novi's testimony, what he's doing as a grantee. You need information about how to contact host institutions, or is it the evaluation process? So we see a lot of people just want to have some general information. What are these grants that are available and how can you apply for it? So I think almost 50% interested in a general understanding, and then evenly distributed. So fabulous. That gives us a very good first idea about who you are. And that, of course, leaves it to us to introduce you to our speakers today. Now, before we proceed, we want this, of course, to be an interactive session. So this is an opportunity for you to ask questions. Please keep your microphone switched off. Please don't fiddle with the camera. If you have any questions, just type them in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we will either respond to you in writing or we will channel your question to our panelists. Now, what you probably know is that the European Research Council grants are part and parcel of a much larger funding program for research, science and innovation, which is called Horizon Europe. And the ERC grants in particular are a very important instrument to build bridges between the European research community and those of Europe's partner countries. And we're very happy today to welcome 3 speakers that have generously agreed to just say a few words about the scientific ties between the country where they're currently based and Europe. And it's my pleasure to invite you to our first distinguished guest, and it is Mr. Gediminas Ramanauskas, who is joining us from Japan. He is the head of Science, Innovation, Digital and other EU policy section at the delegation of the European Union to Japan. Mr. Ramanauskas' background is in science, management and economics. He was previously advisor on international economic policy to the president of Lithuania and then joined the European Commission, previously working in the Secretary General on administrative modernization before he moved to the Directorate General Environment, where he worked on international negotiations and monitoring of the EU actions in the area of climate change. In 2012, he moved to the Directorate General, or DG, Research and Innovation, and again, he's looking after international cooperation in the field of S&T cooperation with key partners such as, for example, Israel, Central Asia, Africa, and Russia. Now, Mr. Romanauskas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, first of all, I would like to thank organizers of this event, European Research Council and EURAXESS, for their kind invitation. It's my great pleasure and privilege to participate. First of all, it's the framework for collaboration in STI for the EU and Japan is very favorable. The EU and Japan are like-minded partners. We have concluded the EU-Japan Strategic Partnership Agreement and Economic Partnership Agreement, which came into force in 2019, to work together on all dimensions, on connectivity, bilaterally and multilaterally, including digital, transport, energy, and people-to-people exchanges. In 2019, we launched the Partnership for Sustainable Connectivity and Quality Infrastructure. To accelerate climate and environmental action, in 2021, we launched the EU-Japan Green Alliance. Through this alliance, we will deepen cooperation on energy transition, environmental protection, regulatory cooperation, as well as research and innovation. Since the coming into force of the overarching Science and Technology Cooperation Agreement between the EU and Japan in 2011, we have come a long way in solidifying our collaboration in research and innovation. Important recent step in this direction was a letter of intent on strengthening cooperation in STI that was signed in May last year by the EU Commissioner Maria Gabriel and the then State Minister in charge of Science and Technology Policy, Mr. Naokazu Takemoto. In the letter, the two sides expressed an intention to work together on a variety of specific topics and to explore synergies between the mission areas of Horizon Europe and the moonshot goals of the Moonshot Research and Development Program of Japan. The fact that cooperation in research and innovation is a key element of EU-Japan relations was reaffirmed by our leaders during the EU-Japan Summit, which took place this year in May. In the joint statement, both sides committed to increasing cooperation in research and innovation and to joining forces to defeat the COVID-19 pandemic and build more resilient, inclusive, green, and digital economies. Over 10 years since entering into force of Science and Technology Cooperation Agreement, our collaboration in research and innovation has been taking place mostly under the EU Research and Innovation Framework Program, Horizon 2020. It is continuing from this year and its successor, Horizon Europe. We're looking forward to the next EU-Japan Science and Technology Joint Committee, which will take place later this year. During this meeting, we intend to assess the progress in our collaboration in research and innovation and to agree on the modalities and areas for enhanced collaboration in the years to come. There are many global challenges addressing which it requires concerted efforts of research communities and the systematic support of policymakers and funders. It is important to note that Japan belongs to a group of non-EU countries which are eligible for association with Horizon Europe. Association of Japan would enlarge the geographical scope of the overall program and would offer lots of opportunities for researchers, scientists, companies, institutions, and other entities to participate under generally the same conditions as those of the member states. The Association of Japan would allow both sides to work closer than ever to jointly promote innovations and growth, strengthen the capacity to tackle global societal challenges such as climate change, rapid digitalization, aging society, pandemics, sustainability, as well as horizontal issues such as open science, gender balance, researchers' mobility, and many more. The European Research Council has been very active in Japan, very active and very successful. It is remarkable that the European Commission has signed 3 implementing arrangements with the Japanese STI funding agencies. Such agreements have been concluded, first of all, with the Japan Society for Promotion of Science, GSPS, in 2015. Then later with the Japan Science and Technology Agency, GST, in 2018. And last year in November, an agreement was concluded with the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development, AMED. This fact alone shows that both sides recognize a great potential for research collaboration across numerous fields and a great need to support researchers' mobility. These implementing arrangements provide opportunities for Japan-based researchers in GST, GSTS, and AMED-funded projects to carry out their research with European Research Council teams in Europe through short-term and long-term, single and multiple visits. We are aware that due to COVID-19 pandemics, plans of Japanese researchers to visit ERC projects had to be postponed. And I'm sure that ERC colleagues have the latest statistics on the research visits. According to the information that we have here in the EU delegation to Japan, GSPS intends to dispatch 3 fellows under implementing arrangement by the end of this year. GST intended to dispatch several GST-funded researchers, but this is difficult due to COVID-19 restrictions. And AMED is also, due these restrictions, is not considering dispatching fellows during this fiscal year. Looking at the statistic in previous years, I see that indeed, since GSPS concluded implementing arrangement the earliest, they have the largest number of fellows who had a chance to visit ERC teams. By the end of 2019, the numbers that I see is as follows. GSPS sent 42 and GST sent 8 fellows to ERC teams. But these are not final numbers. And of course, here in delegation, we are committed to facilitate this process. And we are always glad to interact with colleagues who are looking for the opportunities to join ERC teams and facilitate their requests. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I would like to end my short presentation. I wish you a fruitful meeting, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramanauskas, and we've already alluded to a very important part of the program today, the ERC implementing arrangements, and we'll have a speaker on that later on in the program. But if you allow me, if we continue and we look very briefly at Korea, we're joined also by a colleague from Korea, Ms. Joo Young Kim, who is working as a policy officer in science, technology, and innovation at the delegation of the EU to the Republic of Korea. She's previously worked with the Korean National Research Foundation, and her job is really to look at this bilateral relations in science, technology, and innovation. Ms. Kim, please, if I invite you, please, to share your presentation.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for your kind invitation to the ERC webinar today. My name is Young Kim, Policy Officer in Science, Technology, and Innovation at the EU delegation to the Republic of Korea. You may be more familiar with BTS or K-pop rather than the research and innovation of the Republic of Korea, but it's really time to pay attention to the excellence of its science and technology. As the most innovative and R&D-oriented country globally, the Republic of Korea has put around 4.3% of its GDP for research and development every year, considering science and technology as crucial leverage of the economy. Having several world-class companies such as Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and SK, Korea is actually considered as one of the key global leaders in various industrial areas such as semiconductors, electric vehicles, batteries, mobile phones, electronics, 5G, and so on. More than 75% of the national R&D investment comes from the companies. The Korean government unveiled the Korean New Deal policy in 2020, mainly focusing on digital and green as the two strategic pillars similar to those of Europe. Based on such political direction, both sides have had regular high-level dialogues in science and technology and the digital economy with a view to sharing up-to-date policies, technologies, strategies, and the possible research areas for cooperation. Korea has also successfully joined the Horizon Framework Program since the 2000s, with a 23% of success rate. More than 100 Korean entities participate in Horizon 2020 general opening calls in various research areas across pillars. The Korean entities also joined other European programs such as Euratom, Eureka, Eurostars, etc. In ERC, critical regulations such as staying in Europe for at least half of the research period have likely made Korean researchers hesitate to apply for ERC. Indeed, only a few Koreans based already in Europe have joined the ERC program. Instead, more than 200 Korean researchers have visited ERC teams through the ERC Korea Special Program since 2014, which seemed to contribute to extending the collaboration scope to the Horizon program for the next step. Now, Korea stands in front of the new starting point, being a potential associate country of Horizon Europe. We expect our new proposal will provide excellent opportunities for both Korean and European researchers to co-work for a closer, more profound and more innovative research across countries, mainly in Pillar 2, and also in Pillar 1, where the Korean government is very eager to cooperate. Though negotiations will take some time to resolve many practical and administrative issues, I foresee it will come true in the end. Today, Commissioner Thierry Breton for Internal Market and also Digital have left this country after a very successful visit for 3 days. I assure you that more and more collaboration between the EU and Korea is expected to occur in various research and innovation fields. Last but not least, I would like to ask my top European researchers and innovators to take this country into your account as a crucial partner for extending your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kim, for this interesting explanation on the relations between Europe and the Republic of Korea. Now we have one final speaker who is also going to share with us a little bit about the bilateral relations between Europe and Singapore. And it is my very dear colleague, Miss Isabella Pirollo. She is a multitasking genius because she's currently actually managing a different webinar on a different screen. So Isabella is joining us from the Economic and Trade section of the European Union delegation to Singapore, where she is the International Relations Officer, but she's taking care of a lot more. She follows industry, innovation, research, and SMEs policies, not just in Singapore, but also in Southeast Asia. So Isabella, if you just please share with us a few words.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I'm not sure I deserve all these compliments, especially on the multitasking, but indeed I will do my best. First of all, welcome to all of you from all over Asia and Europe. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot to the organizers, to the European Research Council, to EURAXESS. Suzanne and Jenny are always doing a fantastic job as always. And thanks to all of you that you are as numerous as always when it comes to talking about research and talking about the opportunity that Asia has with Europe. I think I would just like to pass a very few messages. My colleagues from the other delegations already did a terrific job in mentioning why research is so important for the European Union in their respective countries. And I can only confirm that it is the same also for the European Union and Singapore. My colleague from Korea was just mentioning the visit from one of our commissioners. And in July, we also had a visit here in Singapore of an executive vice president of the Commission, Mr. Timmermans, who is in charge of climate change. And he also put at top of his agenda in the discussions with Singapore political leaders, cooperation in the area of research and innovation. I believe that the sign that all the political level wants to talk, wants to engage about cooperating should be a very positive side also for you, because this means that we will put more and more energy in order to try to make it easier, in order to help you also to cooperate more and more. So I think this is the first message. Be reassured that what is being discussed today, we are listening to everything that is coming up, and we really hope also to support you more and more. In addition, I want also to mention about Singapore and EU dialogue when it comes to research and innovation, that it has been a dialogue that has been on for a long time. When we think about implementing arrangements, and you will discuss it later more in detail, Singapore and the EU have one that was signed in November 2019. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, this implementing arrangement, of course, was not used to the extent that could be. So I'm sure that after today, and hopefully in better condition, that this situation will change. But then the discussion with Singapore are also now broadening to what is the other, our framework research program, so Horizon Europe. And it was also very significant, the fact that we adopted Horizon Europe more or less few days before or a few days after Singapore adoption of its own policy agenda for research, the Research Innovation Entrepreneurship 2025. And when we look at these documents, we see that the priorities are also largely overlapping. So we talk about advanced manufacturing, we talk about digital, we talk about recovering our economy, and of course, we talk about the green transition, that it's one of our big main priorities. And in going forward to COP26, I'm sure that you have many more ideas also how to make the green transition happen. And the novelty of Horizon is also that it's opening more to the third countries. So when it comes to Singapore, the EU is also looking at the country as one of the potential countries that could be associated to the program. Now we are in discussion at political level, but also at more technical level. And we hope also to see progression like in Korea about this possibility. What is clear is like there is an interest, research and cooperation are at the center of everybody focus, because they can really make a difference, and not only in terms of our own societies, but also in terms of recovering our economy. And this brings me to the second point. I arrived in Singapore a little bit more than 1 year ago. So it was January 2020, and it was before COVID, just very few weeks before COVID, the COVID pandemic started. And since I got here, it was clear that internationally, globally, the research community was very cohesive, and they were the first one who immediately understood the importance of sharing data, sharing information, and as I already mentioned many times, and cooperating. So for the EU, international cooperation is really an important factor. It's what is going to make our societies also better, because it's going to allow you to come up with more ideas, and also to help us in solving the most challenging issues of our time. I just want to conclude by reminding you, but I'm sure you know better than me, how fantastic opportunities ERC offer And the fact that this meeting today, this moment is for sure extremely valuable, because I hope that by the end you will have new ideas, you will find new possibilities for cooperation, and you will also have the opportunity then to be part of this very big family of researchers that it's not only within the European Union, but also an international one. So thanks a lot again for having me. I wish you all the best with your discussions. And Suzanne, I give you back the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isabella. So we've had a lot of synergies and the research agendas of the European Union and its partner countries. And if you're not from any of these 3 countries that we've heard about today, do not worry. The ERC grants are open to researchers of any nationality and based anywhere in the world. And we are now very happy to invite the keynote speaker for today. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Christian Oswalt. Christian is a scientific officer at the ERC Executive Agency, where he coordinates and supports the selection of proposals in the area of fundamental constituents of matter. So like I think most of the colleagues working at the ERC Executive Agency, he's a scientist as well. His background is in particle physics, so he very much understands where the applicants are coming from. And we are all very much looking forward to your presentation now, Christian. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and I will start sharing my slides. I hope this is going to work now. Up. Okay, do you see the slides?
Absolutely perfect.
Great, so I will just move this. Okay, so yes, also thank you from my side for your interest in the ERC and for connecting to this webinar. In the poll in the beginning, we have seen that many of you are completely fresh to the ERC, and others might be already starting a proposal or considering to do so. So I will try to address all audiences in this presentation. And so first, I will address some basic questions, such as, can you apply for an ERC grant? And what does the ERC offer? And second, I will go into more depth and explain in detail how the panels evaluate your proposal. And I think this will be also useful to better grasp what the ERC grants are about. So let me very briefly give some background. We heard already in Susan's introduction that the ERC is part of the Horizon Europe Framework Program. This program has been just renewed in 2021, and the ERC will distribute 16 billion euros over 7 years. Now, what is really special about the ERC is that it provides funding from scientists for scientists. There's a scientific council formed of 22 renowned researchers, and they define the complete scientific strategy. For instance, they define the types of grants, how they are evaluated, and so on. And then there's the ERC Executive Agency, where I work, and we carry out all the administrative work related to the evaluation and the grants. So now I would like to answer your first question that you probably have. So we heard already scientists of any nationality can apply for an ERC grant. The ERC funds individual scientists, and it has a bottom-up approach.
Christian, I'm
yes?
sorry to interrupt
yes,
you. There is a black box on your slides. Would you
Ah.
probably be able to go out and just start it again? Yeah, now
Is
it's
it
gone.
fine now? Okay.
It's gone. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. So yes, so let me get back. The ERC has the bottom-up approach, which means there's no predefined program. So everybody with a brilliant idea for a research project can apply to the ERC. And this can be really everything. It can be from physical science and engineering, life science, or social science and humanities. Your project can be also either in basic research or applied research. Now, you probably will ask, why is it then called the European Research Council? And that is because you're expected to carry out the funded project at a host institution located in the European Union or in one of the countries associated to the framework program. We heard, for instance, in the introduction of Mr. Ramanauskas, that there are talks ongoing if Japan might become an associated country to this to the ERC. So this would mean then that you could also do your ERC project in Japan. However, since the framework program has been just renewed, the negotiation talks are still ongoing, and we hope to have in the coming months some clarity of who will be in this group of associated countries. If you're wondering how to find the host institution, I think a good starting point is to get in touch with the researchers from your community. You probably know already best where in Europe is the research carried out that is interesting for you. So why not get directly in touch with the researchers from these groups? I can also tell you that the institutions and also the research groups are very keen to host the ERC grantee. Now, some important information for the researchers connecting from countries outside Europe. As a grantee, you can keep your affiliation with your home institute outside Europe as long as you spend 50% of your working time in Europe. Also, it is possible that members of your team are based outside Europe. So you see, you have a lot of flexibility there. So far, the ERC has funded almost 11,000 grantees, and well, still a rather small fraction of these grantees are from countries outside the EU or the associated countries. You see here, there have been so far 10 grantees from Singapore, 37 grantees from Japan, and 10 ERC grantees from Korea. However, if we look at the number of applications, we notice that there's an increasing proportion of proposals from nationals outside the EU and the associated countries. So maybe the next proposal is from you. So what does the ERC offer to you? The idea of the ERC is to give very generous grants for long duration, 5 years. And this is to give you all the freedom and independence to really focus on your research. There's an ERC grant for each career stage, a starting grant up to 7 years after your PhD. This is typically for researchers who are still in the process of establishing their own group. Then there's the consolidator grant up to 12 years after the PhD. And finally, the advanced grant for the established leaders of their field. You see the grants range from 1.5 million euros to 2.5 million euros. And there's even a top up of up to 1 million euro for the following reasons. First, if you have to purchase major equipment for your research. Second, if you have to pay for access to large facilities. Third, for major experimental costs. And last but not least, and this might be very interesting for you, also to pay the relocation expenses to move with your lab from your country to Europe or the associated countries. So now I talked a lot about money, but the ERC offers more than that. The ERC is really a quality label. You compete for the grants at an international level, and your proposal is evaluated by the top scientists worldwide. As a scientific officer, I regularly read the status reports of the funded projects, and I can say I very often read how thankful the researchers are that the ERC grant helped them to get established and to get a permanent position. The ERC offers also another type of grant that I want to briefly mention today, the so-called synergy grant. The synergy grant is for projects that require a combination of knowledge, methods, skills, expertise, teams of different principal investigators. So the grant funds between 2 and 4 principal investigators with a sum of up to 10 million euros for a duration of 6 years. There can be between 1 and 4 host institutions be involved. And now what's important, one host institution can be outside the EU or the associated countries. So it's possible for you to team up with research groups in Europe and carry out a synergy project. So what is required to win an ERC grant? The answer is very simple because the ERC has one sole evaluation criterion, and that's scientific excellence. Scientific excellence is assessed along 2 axes. One is the excellence of the research project, and the second is the excellence of the principal investigator with you. Later on, I will go into more detail what that really means and what is expected from your project and also from your profile. Now, I would like to show you how approximately an ERC application is structured. I will focus today only on the scientific parts that are evaluated by the panels. There are other administrative parts, but this is, let's say, less important for the evaluation. Your proposal contains, first of all, an extended synopsis of 5 pages where we briefly summarize your research project. Then there's a CV and a track record. And what you see here, these first two elements in the orange box, I call this the business card of your project. And in a moment, you will understand why is this. Then there's a full scientific proposal where you describe in detail your research project, and then a small part of 2 pages where you will describe the resources of your project. So what happens to this proposal? You submit it to 1 out of 27 panels covering all domains of science. Again, it can be from physical science, engineering, life science, and social science and humanities. These panels do not reflect any scientific priorities. They're just put in place to deal with the large number of proposals that the ERC receives every year. Just to give you some idea, these panels consist of around 15 world-leading scientists from different neighboring fields. So now you submitted your proposal. What happens with it? The ERC has a 2-step process. And in the first step, the panels look only at your orange box. So that's why I call it the business card. They don't have access to the rest of your proposal. So you need to make sure that all relevant information is contained in this business card. And based on these business cards, they select the best proposals to be evaluated in further detail at the second step of the evaluation. In the second step, the panel also asks external experts to provide their opinion on your proposal. So maybe you might have already received an invitation to review an ERC proposal. Also, you will be asked to present your project in an interview in front of the panel. Now, in the following, I will give more detail on the criteria applied to your proposal. And I think this gives really a good idea what the ERC grants are about. And I think it will also help you to decide if an ERC grant could be something for you, or if you rather think that another grant scheme is better. So how is your research project evaluated? So the panel members have a set of questions, and I will go with you through each of these questions to better understand what the ERC is about. So the first question is, to what extent does the proposed research address important challenges? Now, what is an important challenge? It can be a societal challenge, but what the ERC means rather is a scientific challenge. So it means your project is answering a long-standing or a burning question of your scientific field. If this is not the case, the panel will say, well, we don't know if this would really make a difference to the broader picture if we fund this project or not. So you really need a project that is able to convince them of the opposite. The second question that they will look at is, to what extent are the objectives ambitious and beyond of the state of the art? What does this mean? The worst thing that an ERC panel can say about your proposal is that it is incremental, or that it's just a mere continuation of your previous work. So your project should have the potential to make a big step forward. You need to describe the current state of the art in your proposal, and you also need to know very well your competitors in your field. And also you need to argue why your research idea is better. Then the next question is, to what extent is the proposed research high risk, high gain? And we hear this term high risk, high gain very often in the context of the ERC. And sometimes it is misunderstood in the sense that you need only something very vague and some big preliminary vision. But what it really means is that the ERC panels expect that you have a concrete plan how to explore in your project new terrain, off the beaten path, bring in new ideas, new concepts, and new approaches. So the risk in the ERC project consists in trying something completely new, what has been never tried. Now, the last question that panels answer is, to what extent is the outlined scientific approach feasible? And this somewhat counterbalances what was in the previous question. You need in your ERC proposal to present a clear route how you plan to achieve the goals of your project, and you need to know what other researchers tried before without success, and you will need to explain how you will circumvent these known issues. Panels will also look if you are aware of the main risks of your project that come with your idea, and if you have a plan B if these risks materialize. Again, doing risky research is very positively seen by the ERC, but you need to be aware of the risks and have some idea how to control them. So if you convinced the ERC panel of that your project addresses all these 4 aspects, your proposal will make it to the second step of the evaluation. In the second step, the panels will look again at the same questions, But in addition, there will be other questions on the methodology of your project, on the working arrangements, and the resources in your projects. So Susan mentioned in the introduction that I'm a scientist. Now I'm somewhat an EU bureaucrat, and I would pass the message that it's not the bureaucrats like me evaluating your proposal. You write it for scientists. So if you want an opinion, if your proposal could be interesting for the ERC, I think the best advice is to ask your peers for their opinion on your proposal. It is also good to keep in mind that ERC panel members act as generalists. So some of the panelists are closer to your field and others can be really far. So ideally, they will say, this is not exactly my field, but I understood what the applicant wants to do and the research is truly exciting. I'm looking forward to see the results of this project. So far, so good on the research project. I said also the excellence of the principal investigator is evaluated by the ERC. So what are the criteria here? There are 3 aspects. And if you are a starting or a consolidator grant applicant, the ERC panels look at 3 elements to assess your excellence. Your ability to conduct groundbreaking research, your creative independent thinking, and your capacity and expertise to successfully execute the project. For the advanced grant calls, the panels look instead of the independence at your leadership in the training and the advancement of young science. To assess these criteria, the panels look at your past scientific achievements as indicators. So this includes, for instance, your research outputs documented in journal articles, conference proceedings, monographs, or preprints and patents. It also includes recognitions of the scientific community, such as invited presentation, prizes, or Academy Awards. Now, what is really important when you describe your scientific achievements is also to give context and environment of your scientific production. Only if a panel knows about it, they can take it into account. And there are various elements that can impact your scientific production. For example, parental leaves, your lab was closed during COVID, or you have a high teaching load. Regarding parental leaves, I just want to make a side remark because the ERC is really promoting equal opportunities. So, for instance, if you are a mother or you took parental leave, this time is considered as, you will your eligibility window to apply for the different grant schemes will be extended. So for instance, if you want to apply for a starting grantee, and if you had, for instance, 1 child, then you get 18 months additional time after your PhD. Now, since a large part of the audience is not from Europe, I think it's also good to briefly explain the environment in your country or your institution, because in some academic systems and some institutions, it's difficult or even impossible for young researchers to establish their own group. So you can briefly mention this in your proposal and, more importantly, highlight alternative indicators of your research. I also want to say a few words about publications, because here also the context and the environment is very important. Depending on the grant scheme, you're asked to list up to 10 highlight publications in your ERC proposal. please don't be put off if you are in the starting grant profile, because for the starting grant, it's only up to 5 highlight publications, and the requirement is really 1 publication without your supervisor. Also, panels know that in some fields, it's basically impossible to ever publish in big journals. So what is really important to the panel is the content of your publication. So why not add 1 or 2 sentences to each of the publications describing its scientific importance. Also, if you publish together with co-authors, the panels need to know what was your contribution to the publication. So why not just add 1 or 2 sentences on this as well? Now I want to briefly flash the call calendar in case you are considering an application. So the next deadlines for the starting, consolidator, and advanced grants will be in January, March, and April next year. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. And thank you for your attention. And if you're looking for more information, I think the first source is the ERC website. There you can click on funding and you will find the information on the different grants. And my personal tip is to watch the ERC classes. These are YouTube videos where my colleagues give many more information on the different grants and also how to prepare your ERC application. Also, you're of course welcome to follow our social media channels. And I'm looking forward to take later your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. And indeed, the questions are already coming in, and I'm also looking forward to the Q&A. And I think our next speaker, Dr. Novi Quadranti, can probably shed some light on some of them as well. Novi is, of course, one of the shining stars in Southeast Asia. He is an ERC starting grant recipient. He received the ERC starting grant in 2019. And Novi is an expert in machine learning. He is currently based at the University of Sussex in the UK, but I've just found out that he has just taken on an additional role in March this year, namely he leads a BCAM Severo Ochoa strategic lab on trustworthy machine learning in Spain. So we look forward to your presentation, Novi. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are all well. I'm going to share my slides now. Hopefully all of you can see my slides.
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for the invitation. So for the next 10 minutes, I would like to share my experience with applying ERC grant, and also mention a little bit about my path as a researcher and some tips that I found them useful, and I would like to share them with you, and hopefully you will find them useful as well. So this is my path. I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. So apa kabar everyone if you are from Indonesia. And I moved to Singapore to study my bachelor in engineering at the Nanyang Technological University. And then I did my master and PhD in machine learning in Australia. And during those PhD studies, I visited several countries, Finland, US, Canada, Austria, and Germany. I got to know about the ERC grant actually while I was visiting Austria. And after my PhD, my first job was in University of Cambridge. I ran my own project with the support from Newton International Fellowship. And then after 2 years at Cambridge, I moved to Sussex. And since 2014, I'm here in the University of Sussex. And also, as Susan mentioned, that since 2021, I'm also based in Bilbao, Spain, to work at the Bach Center for Applied Mathematics, BACAM, on trustworthy machine learning. So this is just a brief summary. And this is my journey. As I alluded before, that I got to know about ERC grant way back during my PhD study in 2011. And only as you notice, I will go through slowly, that only in 2018 that I did make my application for the ERC starting grant. In between that 2011 and 2018, I attended ERC starting grant event in London, organized by the UK National Contact Point for the ERC. One thing that I remember quite a lot of things from that ERC starting grant event, but I remember one thing: the ERC grantee was always emphasizing about prepare, practice, and especially for the interview. And he was sharing with us that he prepared his 5 minutes presentation even in the birthday party of his kid. So that is like, I was like, okay, wow, that's a dedication. And then, so in between that, in 2014, I attended that, but I didn't apply immediately. So I feel like I need to build up my research profile, research portfolio. I submitted some grant as well and get supported based on from the UK National Research Council. And only in 2018, I make my first submission. And the project was about Bayesian models and algorithm for fairness and transparency. The acronym is Bayesian GDPR. As Christian already mentioned, there are 27 panels, and my proposal was submitted to the panel called PE6 in computer science and informatics. Got invited for the interview in Brazil in 2019, and in order to prepare for this interview, I remember about the event in 2014 about prepare, practice. I really practice a lot, and I even practice a lot with my wife and my daughter. And I remember at one time my daughter said that no fairness, no transparency. So this is the moment that I said, okay, yes, maybe I've been practicing too much. So I need to thank my wife and my daughter as well for listening all my practice. And the host institution also helped me to practice in front of my colleagues, with the coach as well, and with everyone within the department, outside the department, outside the schools. And I just wanted to emphasize as well that when I first heard about the interview invitation was around March, and the interview itself in June. I was full-time from mid-March until my interview days, was just practicing and preparing for that particular interview. And the project itself started in April 2020 because there are several things related to the ethics of the project, because we are processing personal data that need to be considered and currently also still being considered as a regular reporting on the ethics sides. So that's my journey, my experience applying for an ERC starting grant. And what ERC grants give me, it accelerates really my research plan. So as Christian already mentioned, that it has a generous budget, it has a long-term support, and with this generous budget and long-term support, we were able to negotiate the best working condition with the host institution. And my host institution kindly relieving me from the teaching and admin duties for the next 5 years to focus on my research, to grow my research team. And I also use the funding from ERC grant to strengthen research collaboration with other machine learning groups in the top European university under the European Lab for Learning and Intelligence System, ALICE, and also the Bucks Center for Applied Mathematics in Spain. I use this generous budget from ERC as well to offer research opportunity, including studentship and internship to underrepresented groups in my machine learning community. So this is some of the tips, and I'm happy that as well at the last slide of Christian, you mentioned about the ERC classes, because my general tips is early planning is essential. I was feeling very lucky. I got to know about ERC in 2011. And only 7 years later, I applied. And in order, like, you don't have to travel to Austria to know about the ERC. You can actually watch in this YouTube ERC classes. It's very entertaining, full of tips and all the description that is important for the evaluation of your proposals. And I wish they have this particular ERC class while I was applying in 2018. I think they managed to have this recently in 2020. So please have a look in these ERC classes on YouTube. And the second tips in this early planning is essentially attend and ask questions the ERC webinar series. But you are already here, so I'm really happy that most of you are having early planning. So that's some of the general tips, and as well, it might be useful to look at examples of successful application, and you can actually use ERC Data Hub. This is the database to show that which particular panels that you might be interested to submit to. I was in the PE6, Computer Science and Informatics, but in here's in the panels that you can see all the other 26 panels, and you can give an example. You can get an examples of a successful application in terms of the abstract, the host institution, and the principal investigator itself. So you can get to know about the successful application. And when you have your application, it's already also being mentioned that it's good to get reviewed by your colleague in your department, colleague in your school, colleague even outside your school, outside your university, colleague that you collaborate together in your field. So this is very important to get the application reviewed by colleague. And I'm sure that I also wanted to make some tips about, I mean, our audience are mostly from outside EU, and we are wondering about, like, you might be wondering about, yes, how do I get about, an examples of the proposals that are funded by the ERC. And one of the option, maybe this is already being allowed about the international arrangement funding. If you find it's appropriate, already mentioned Singapore. If you are holding grants from NRF, Japan is the three councils, also Korea, where you can visit the groups of ERC teams. You can build collaboration, and you can build connection, and you can learn how to be successful in your ERC application. And also some other university, for example, in Germany, they have the ERC preparative fellowship that you work there in 18 months to build your proposals, to write your grants with the intention that that particular university will be the host institution. I'm not specifically promoting this university. I'm not from this university, but this is an example that I found when I'm searching in Google. I'm pretty sure there are a lot more opportunity for getting connected to the EU and ERC teams. And this is the general tips that I would like to say about the research project. Because as Christian mentioned, there are two components about the research project and about the principal investigator. This is the tips that I got it in 2014 from the UK ERC National Contact Points, that you need to convey your research passion. This will be feasible in your proposal and also during the interview, that you need to show that the research is groundbreaking, but you need to balance that vision with a strong, confident plan and a good project structures. And this is the important things about high risk, high gain, that we convey the vision, but we also provide a detailed project structure and plan. And make the application a pleasure to read. Use data, graph, visualize your ideas. I watched the ERC classes. They were mentioning about the bold faces. Maybe it's not too much bold faces, but I was using quite a lot of bold faces. But I didn't watch that particular ERC class video in 2018. But you can decide yourself, how to make your application a pleasure to read. That's important, because it will be read by the expert and also non-expert in your field. The last bit, my last slide, is about the principal investigator itself, that we need to explain, to convey that we are the right person to undertake the particular project that you propose? What does it mean? How do you show this particular that you are the right person? Christian already mentioned about the publication. There are ways for you to emphasize like what is important in your field, what type of publication, is it conference, is journals, and the prior funding as well. It's important, at least in my case, I believe, because for my project, I did have prior funding for 1.5 years on the project to lay the groundwork for the project that I'm currently doing under the ERC grant. And not only that, you need to convince that you are the right person, you also need to show that it is very timely. The timeliness of your project is also very crucial. And yeah, have a check about these ERC classes. There are a lot more tips on this shining for the principal investigator and on the research project. So I would like just to say all the best if you're making application, if you are considering, if you are thinking about it. It is a lot of effort, but it is worth the effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Novi. Now, you've already answered a lot of the questions that are coming in through the Q&A, and I think what Novi said is exactly true. This is the time now for you to ask the questions to the experts. And maybe we will start with what you said. There were a lot of questions, people wondering where can they get information on past successful applications, and Novi has kindly pointed out the ERC database. My colleague Jenny has already put the link in the chat box, and I think this is a great starting point. As Novi has said, have a look and see who are the institutions across Europe that are hosting successful ERC grantees, and maybe this is an opportunity to see whether you can link up with that as well. Christian, is there another way where people can have access to proposals, maybe to get some kind of inspiration on how a successful proposal is structured, perhaps?
So really to get the proposals, I think best is to ask researchers directly, because of course the whole evaluation process is bound to confidentiality, and we also of course won't share the research ideas of the applicants with someone else. So I think the best idea is to really contact researchers from your field, and usually the ERC grantees are very nice people and also happy to help others with their application.
Thank you. I can testify to that. Our bunch here in Southeast Asia are extremely generous. So this is a great advice. Try to maybe contact someone like Novi or reach out to other people in your community to get some advice. Now, asking about the issue of host institutions, the question that comes up again, of course, is which are the countries where the grantee can be hosted. There's always the question, of course, what about the UK? Is the UK still an eligible country? Christian?
As I said before, the negotiations on the associated countries are still ongoing, and we still do not know. Personally, I think there are good chances that in the end, the UK will be an associated country to the framework program. But of course, we have to wait for the end of negotiations and see what is the outcome there.
Thank you so much. Now, another question is always referring to how much time does the grantee have to spend at that host institution in Europe? Now, for someone who might be advanced in their career, they might be applying for a consolidated grant or even an advanced grant, which means they have commitments towards their home institution outside of Europe. Christian, how roughly is it possible to kind of combine these commitments to the European host and maybe their home institution outside of Europe?
So the minimum requirement, as I said, is 50% of the working time spent in Europe. Of course, this is an average time. And well, one has also to think of if it makes sense to carry out a project with a remote team that you see very rarely. I think then it's also not ideal for your research. So I think it's also really an individual thing. You really need, like, it depends really on your type of research. And yeah, if for instance, if you are doing research in a laboratory, then probably you need to be more on site than if you do something which is more yeah, on paper, let's say.
Thank you so much, Christian. But maybe as a general rule, because we get a question now, if you can do an ERC grant and spend the time, for example, in Singapore or in Tokyo, this is not possible, but you can, as Christian has said, there's a way for you to maybe combine these commitments that they have. Now, there are some questions for you, Novi. There's someone who is asking, you were mentioning how long you were practicing, and even your daughter already learned the keywords of your presentation. Now, what exactly do you think do the panelists judge in the interview? Is there some advice for the interview specifically from your side?
Yeah, I think the practice is also helpful because like you also practice about the potential question that a panel's member will be asking. And of course, if you practice more, you practice with different type of colleagues from outside your department, outside your school, so you will get also like a potential question that will be asked during your interview. So answering those questions are very important, that to create confidence in the panel members that you have thought about it and you have like a backup plan, for example. So this is the important part of the interview, is about answering question and also like conveying your passion with the research project itself.
Thank you. And there was another specific question, Novi, for you from someone, I think, in Malaysia, who was particularly intrigued by your mentioning that you're collaborating with so many different machine learning groups. So did you, how did you put that in your proposal, your intentions of collaboration? Do you have to provide any evidence, or how did you put that in your proposal?
Yeah, so this is in the proposal itself. During that time, I mentioned about the collaboration with the machine learning groups that I already have, so that I have already built the relationship. And in the I don't specifically mention about in the machine learning groups what would be other groups that I would like to get connected to. But since the project is about fairness and transparency, in that proposal I mentioned about there is a groups at this interface between computer science and social science that I would like to get connected to after I build up my research outputs. And this is I convey the intention in the main proposal itself. But in terms of the collaboration, international collaboration that I have already had, I emphasize that in the profile of the applicants about the principal investigator.
Thank you so much. And as Novi has said, as Christian has said, the ERC website contains a whole host of really very detailed information for potential applicants. There's the recorded information on really taking you step by step through the application process. And in the chat box, you've probably already seen, we are joined by 2 NCPs. The NCPs are the national contact points. We have them all across Europe, and in fact outside of Europe as well. These are experts that are really there for you as applicants to reach out to and to get advice on your proposal, on kind of the administrative aspects of your proposal as well. For example, if ethics are involved, but also if you're looking for the right host to take care of you with a particular project that you have in mind. So do make a use of that as well. I think before we take some more questions, it's time for us to invite our final speaker of today. It is Davide INNOCENTI. And Davide is talking about an extremely important part of the ERC opportunities outside of the grant schemes, namely the so-called implementing arrangements. And these are bilateral arrangements between the ERC and certain countries across the globe that allow researchers from outside of Europe to spend some time on an ERC-funded project in Europe. So David, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. I will share the slides, my slides with you. I think you should be already able to see that. So good morning, everybody from Brussels, but especially good afternoon and good evening for most of you that are following us from far east. I would like to thank the EURAXESS colleague for the chance to present this European Research Council program, fostering international participation. But above all of you that join us numerous today and are still connected so late. So ERC implementing arrangements are actually an opportunity to join an ERC team. These are international agreements promoting this opportunity for scientists supported by third country funding agencies. So far, we have 16 implementing arrangements that have been signed with funding agency from 12 different countries. New agreements are actually signed every year. In particular, in 2020, the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development joined us, and as well the Indian Council for Social Science Research. More than 450 international researchers already visited an ERC project since 2012 in the framework of the implementing arrangement. And every year, the executive agency of the ERC launched an internal call for expression of interest to ask the ERC principal investigator for their availability to temporarily host international research. Next call will be launched in this November. As you can see, this is the list of the 16 third country funding bodies that are already participating to the program. All these agreements have been signed by the Commission, the relative third country research institutions and ministries, and these are available on our additional opportunities webpage. There you can find even more detail about the agreement, the eligibility criteria, the process, which is specific for each one of the agreement. As you can see, one agreement has been signed in 2013 with the Ministry of Science, Information and Communication Technology for the National Research Foundation of the Republic of Korea. 3 agreements have been signed so far with Japanese funding bodies, one with the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science in 2015, one with the Japan Science and Technology Agency in 2017, and finally, as already mentioned before, one in 2020 with the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development. Finally, an agreement has been signed as well with the Research Foundation of Singapore in 2019. But how does it work? I will quickly guide you through the process. As I already mentioned before, every year we launch an internal call for expression of interest, contacted all the eligible ERC principal investigator. ERC principal investigator have more or less 1 month to express their interest to host an international researcher, and after the call is closed, we send the list of interested principal investigator to all the participating funding bodies. At this stage, the ball is within the third country based funding agency and the researcher interested. The agencies will launch their own internal calls with using different modalities. This can change anytime. Then this way they inform all of the eligible researchers that as applicants, they have to directly contact an ERC principal investigator to seek an agreement on a possible research visit. At this stage, the ERC principal investigator can accept or not the research visit. If accepted, they have to provide, together with the host institution, a letter of support for the potential visitor. Then the third country-based funding agency will evaluate all the proposal and will fund the successful one. Finally, the visiting scientists will have to plan and execute the visit, of course, in agreement with the principal investigator in terms of timing and in terms of project, in terms of they have to seek an agreement about the visit in general. There are, of course, few participation process and conditions that are common to all the agreements. I will quickly show you the most important one. First of all, the ERC executive agency does not intervene in the communication between the ERC PIs and the potential visitors, and as well does not intervene in the selection process. This is completely on top of a responsibility of the funding agency. The visit has to take place within the lifetime of the ERC project. And of course, it is expected that collaboration will occur in similar areas of scientific interest on topics of mutual interest. Finally, the visiting researcher may be incorporated in the research team of the ERC principal investigator for the duration of the visit. So I just present you the general structure and the processes and the main condition of this scheme. Now, I want to update quickly about the state of play of the program. First of all, how the ERC PIs receive this implementing arrangement. As you can see here, in 2012, when the United States National Science Foundation signed the first arrangement, hundreds of PI immediately welcomed the program. Since then, thousands of ERC principal investigators expressed their interest to host international researchers funded by these third country funding bodies. The numbers are growing every year, and they exceed an average of 600 participation in 2020. This means that the program is concretely providing to researchers the possibility to pursue research collaboration with top scientists funded by the ERC. But how this translates in terms of accomplished research visit? Let's see that. Since 2012, almost 500 scientists, international scientists, visited the ERC projects, temporarily joining these teams on single long-term or multiple short-term visits. This is really depending by the criteria determined by the single funding agencies and the agreement sought by ERCPIs and the visitors. But in total, this can sum up to a maximum of 12 months for a total time of the visit. The number of visits grew from 12 in 2012 to a maximum of 100 for 2018 call. Of course, in the last 2 years, as already mentioned before, we faced difficulties due to the pandemics, and many funding bodies have to postpone or suspend their call for expression of interest and consequently the visits. In any case, taking into account all this condition, all this constraint to mobility, the results are still encouraging. Indeed, we have provisory results for 2019 call, our internal call. Then this means for visits that will be in print, that should have been in principle done starting from 2020. We already have 60 visits that have been performed, which is not bad at all. As you can see, the contribution of Japan JST and Japan JSPS is already consistent. But you will notice, of course, that the country that contributed most since the start of the program is the Republic of Korea, with more than 180 visits. which is a very important result. More in detail, let's give a look to the visits and to better understand the nature of this scientific collaboration. To do that, we represent here the number of visits per destination country of visiting researcher and per scientific domain. As I mentioned before, it's expected that collaboration will occur in similar areas of interest, scientific interest, or topical mutual interest, of course. And from this point of view, we notice that all scientific domains are represented, at least for us, of the half of the 24 countries that already have been visited so far, with at least one researcher. In general, almost 60% of the international researchers visited a project in physical sciences and engineering domain, almost 30% a project in life science domain, and around 13% a project of social sciences and humanities domain. Furthermore, we also have a visitor for a synergy grant. So in conclusion, a vast and comprehensive collaborative offer, already translated in practical terms into hundreds of research collaboration, involving hundreds of top researchers of every level of experience in Europe and across the world. So I will leave you mentioning again that the next implementing arrangement call for 2021 will be internally launched in November. And meanwhile, we as executive agency of the ERC will provide you full support information if you want to know more about this opportunity and of scientific collaboration. Thank you very much for your attention. I will pass the ball again to Susanne.
Thank you so much, David. And maybe just to summarize, this is an additional opportunity. So these are specific arrangements that the ERC has in place with a number of countries, including Korea, Japan, and Singapore. So an opportunity for researchers based in those countries to spend some time on an ERC-funded project in Europe. So you're not applying for your own ERC grant, but you're visiting a project that is, of course, relevant to your research and spend some time there. Now, we are almost at the end of our webinar for today. If you allow me to share with you, we are having, and if you're anything like myself, because I always need a few days to digest the information that I have received, and then I come up with my questions, we have prepared a follow-up session on the 5th of October, and this will be a dedicated Q&A session. So if you've heard things today, you're extremely excited and all the advice you've received, but you still have some questions, we will be joined by 2 NCPs. So these are the people that I mentioned previously, part of the national contact points across Europe, and they are constantly looking and consulting potential ERC applicants. They will be joining us for this session on the 5th of October. It's 9 a.m. Central European summertime. So join us for this session, and then you can really ask any question on how to apply for an ERC grant. And another session, because I see in the chat box, a lot of you appear to be interested in the synergy grants. You have work here in Asia, and you are interested in joining forces with someone or a small group across Europe, then the synergy grants would be, I think, the ideal instrument. We have a session on the 11th of October at 3 o'clock. It says here for Singapore-based researchers, but once again, if you're not based in Singapore, please also do join us for this session. Now, as always, Novi, Christian, David, thank you so much for fabulous presentations. Nonetheless, Christian, Novi, final words of wisdom and advice. Maybe Christian, your final word of advice. What should anyone do right now as soon as this webinar is over?
Well, good question. I think I think if you have already like a research plan and really a vision and some big project that you absolutely want to do, I think then you should absolutely go to the ERC website and check out the grants, because the ERC could really help to make your dream come true.
Thank you, Christian. And your inside scoop as the successful grantee, and I see with the first try you were successful, which, again, is very, very impressive.
Thank you. First advice is have a rest because it's already late, probably that. And second thing is really the ERC classes in the YouTube is very, very useful, very, very entertaining. I've enjoyed watching it. And you should check, and you will get to know more about the evaluation, about the ERC grant. So all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we see from you, good things take time. So don't think that you need to rush to meet the next application. This is an annual call, as Christian has told us. This is part of Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe runs over the next 7 years. So there's plenty of time for you to try and get one of these grants. And David, someone interested in going to Europe just for a short time, what should be their next step?
Yes, I think you can start visiting our webpage for additional opportunity, of course, and to check if you can match the eligibility criteria of one of the funding agency which is listed there. And of course, you can ask us for support and more information. Of course, if your country is not listed there, if your funding body is not listed there, you still have the opportunity to push your organization to open and negotiate with us, because we would really welcome any new funding body. Of course, the negotiation process can last 1 year, but then this is a real opportunity, and I would push anybody to knock the door of their own funding bodies if there is this opportunity, really to push them to join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And of course, you should always look at the ERC and the EURAXESS website, because the ERC PIs, such as Novi, are always looking for people to recruit for their project. So I think Novi himself has a couple of PhDs or postdocs that are working with him. So there's additional opportunities to work as part of an ERC funded project. And again, should you have any questions, do reach out to EURAXESS. Tomasz in Korea, Judith in Japan, Jenny and myself in Singapore and ASEAN. And we're always there to channel your questions to the right people, or of course, give you the right answer. And with this, thank you so much. This session has been recorded, and we will share the slides and the recording with you, but I cannot let you go before I have to start a poll here. So if you see the poll now, please answer these 4 questions for us before you go. You have to scroll down. These are 4 questions just to give us a tiny little feedback on the webinar so we can hopefully do better next time round. So before you go, please take a look at our little poll and give us your feedback. And once again, as I said, you will receive the recording, you will receive the slides, and we're always there for you to help you with your application. With this, thank you so much, everyone. Wishing you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Bye.
nice day.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. See you.
Bye, Novi. So I'm just leaving this.